Hello and welcome to the Sound on Screen podcast, a brand new podcast about all things screen audio.
That includes, obviously, you've got music for film, music for television, music for video games as well, which is quite an interesting new field that's coming up in musicology, as well as sound effects and sound design in general for these mediums.
My name is Matt Lawson.
And I'm Liane Silva.
Let's get on with episode 1. Okay, so as this is the first episode of the Sound on Screen podcast, your two co-hosts today, myself and Liane, are just going to have an in-conversation chat about all things film music, what got us into film music, and what we think makes a good film score. So, I'll start with the questions. Liane, tell us a bit about yourself.
I'm doing my PhD in music in University of West London. I'm specialising in cyberpunk music for different mediums. So I'm actually looking into, doing a cross comparison of music in the cyberpunk genre for film, television, and video games. I'm also tying it into my experience as a composer. Not that I have, I'm not Hans Zimmer level or anything like that. But I've had a little bit of experience scoring a couple of films, and I'm now doing a soundtrack for a video game. And it's been quite an interesting and different experience on multiple practical levels, I suppose, that I hadn't considered before going into it. But it's been really, really lots of fun. And there's a lot more, but I feel like I don't want to give you a detailed biography. So I will throw the question back to you. Tell us a bit about yourself.
I've been working at Oxford Brookes University in the music department since 2017, primarily as a film musicologist, expanded into TV and video game music studies over the past few years. Written one book, which was back in 2018. Got another one that's nearly finished.
Nice.
Yeah, so by the time you're watching this, it won't have come out yet, but it's not far away now, on the music in The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and other Tolkien adaptations.
Ooh, we've got that to look forward to then.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've been looking forward to it for about 3 years. I need to finish writing it. I just love film music. I mean, I've taught across other modules on the music degree as well, but film music has been my passion since my master's degree, and I guess we'll come on shortly to talk about what got us into film music in the first place. And now's a good time to do that, I guess. So why, of all the areas of music, what is it about screen music that really appeals to you?
That's a layered question for me in particular, because I actually started off my first academic sort of path, I suppose, not into music, but into medicine, which is quite different. But then, music grew in my life. The importance, the role of it grew in my life to the point where I decided, let's make this a full-time thing, I suppose. But my actual first detour into music was actually through songwriting and popular music performance, particularly through singing, playing guitar, etc. So, at the end of my undergrad here in London, I don't quite know what happened along the way, but I think the storytelling and the narrative aspect and the fact that you've got, not that obviously music on its own isn't enough to tell a story, of course it is, otherwise we wouldn't do it. But, there's just so much that can be layered and added, and so much depth that you have, particularly with, depending on the director, of course, but people like Kubrick, for example, really inspire me. Denis Villeneuve as well. There's just layers, there's subtext, there's other things going on that really just, it just sparkles in my brain, and I just cool, so this means that, there's layers of meaning that I love to just sort of dig into. It's also the aspect, I think, tying it back to certain particular emotional and narrative threads and themes across a script or, whatever the medium might be, obviously. I actually think, I wanted to ask you this question, actually. Do you have one soundtrack that sort of nudged you and brought you onto film music studies in particular?
I mean, not onto film music studies. I can remember the first film soundtrack that really kind of moved me in a way that I'd never experienced before. Mm-hmm. And that was in 1997, so I was 10 years old.
Yeah.
And my dad brought home a VHS copy of Titanic. And
Oh,
I watched that, this big 3-hour epic with
yeah,
the late James Horner providing the score, and of course Celine Dion's infamous song at the end.
yeah.
And just the opening shots of the kind of historical footage of the Titanic, and this
Yeah,
really
yeah,
haunting choral arrangement of one of the main themes, and it that's the first time that music in a film had ever really kind of emotionally engaged me to the
yeah,
point where I was close to tears. I mean, it's not necessarily a comedy film. Titanic, it's quite serious
yeah,
and tragic, and from that point onwards, film music kind of it got its claws into me. So yeah, it was Titanic. It was Titanic. That was the one
yeah.
that really set me eventually on the route to becoming a film music scholar. Interestingly enough, though, I think even when I went to university to do my undergraduate, film music wasn't still really at the top of my priorities. I kind of did a bit of everything, and then I did a second or third year module where I had to analyse the music of one of the Harry Potter films.
Oh,
And again, it was second year, and that really lit the fire inside me of film music again. And then in the third year, I did my dissertation on the music in the Lord of the Rings films.
yeah.
Went out to do a master's, and again, I did my first few assignments on my master's degree were about Wagner's operas, but then I kind of shifted to looking at Wagner's music used in American cartoons and the political impact of
Oh,
that.
yeah.
And then finally, I went on to do my dissertation at master's level on film music. So it was a gradual shift, really, from Titanic in '97 to eventually choosing that as my
Yeah.
my academic priority, really.
Like your main
Yeah,
area
yeah.
of focus. That is really interesting that you mentioned Titanic. Yeah, Titanic was the first soundtrack CD that I really wanted my parents to get me. They got it for me. I listened to that on what was it called, the Walkman,
Yeah.
the Sony.
Sony Walkman,
Yeah, I
yeah.
listened to it. Oh my god! And Celine Dion's song was one of the first few songs. I didn't even know what I was saying because I hadn't started learning how to speak English, but I just memorized the sounds
Yeah.
of it was like this fascinating experience. But it wouldn't be until I can't remember the year now that it came out on, but it was actually the Da Vinci Code. That was the score for me that made me sort of force me to pay attention to, my God, what is this melody? What is happening? What is this thing called film music? Because I think up until that point, I very much didn't really. I mean, it was there. I liked it. I could tell you, I like it. I don't like
Yeah.
it, but I didn't really want to look into it, I suppose.
That was Zimmer, was it? Da Vinci Code, was it Zimmer?
Yeah,
and
it was Hans Zimmer, and yeah, I think he also did the next one. What was it Inferno? I think, which was also quite fascinating in some ways. But it was, for me, it was the Da Vinci Code. It was, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I saw that at the cinema. I mean, somebody watching will be able to tell us the year, and we'll find out after. But
Yeah.
it's early 2000s. It's got
probably,
yeah.
yeah, probably.
But I went to see it at the cinema, and there's that one
Yeah.
cue towards the end that's like over a montage sequence when the whole climax is happening, and the camera goes down through the top of the Louvre, isn't it?
Yeah, and then it
Yeah.
through the ground
And
and
then you get the
into
kind of
the
Hans
tomb
Zimmer-
and
Yeah.
yeah.
You get the Hans Zimmer
Yeah.
kind of assault on the ears.
Sauce, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, we'll do an entire episode on Hans Zimmer, I'm sure, because very strong feelings about Hans Zimmer. That sounds really negative, but yeah, it's not all negative. But he's a very interesting character in terms of how he
Yeah, I
composes and the simplicity in some ways of his music.
Yeah.
In terms of TV and video games, then, so that's obviously becoming a larger sub-discipline, both in musicological study and
Yeah.
obviously with things like peak TV and more money being spent on TV programs. Was there any television program or video game that particularly caught your imagination in terms of the music?
Television, I think I have to like really stop and think about it. But video games, maybe I have to stop and think about it. No, actually, yeah, video games. I think Assassin's Creed 2 was the one for me that first. But that game, for Assassin's Creed fans, I think the whole Ezio trilogy, that's a whole very dear to our hearts. I think to most people's hearts anyway. But yeah, I think Assassin's Creed 2 might have been the one to just sort of really catch my ear, so to speak. Although I've been a fan of the series. I've been, you know, keeping up more or less with the titles, including more recent ones. They always find, I guess they've been progressing in a certain way that is not as melodically marking, I suppose, as that one. But they always find interesting ways to combine different genres, completely different genres that I just don't expect most of the time. So I find it refreshing in that way. Television series. Oh gosh,
It's really interesting that you're struggling, because I think TV, prior to this kind of onset of peak television and kind of the spending multi-millions of dollars on one episode, I think TV music is both understudied and quite sparse in terms of its use. I mean, obviously, television shows have always had music of some description, but until recently, it's never got to the same kind of cinematic level as cinema has. So I mean, perfectly natural that we're struggling. All the TV examples I can think of are probably from the last 10 or 15 years that really caught my imagination. The Simpsons, to some extent, in how it uses pre-existing Beethoven, and that uses music really, you know, and again, I'd love to do an episode on TV music or cartoon music at some point, because I think that's a really fun thing to discuss.
Yeah, I mean, so I suppose we can do a whole episode on TV music, as you said, later on, but I think bringing it back a little bit to film music, what makes an effective soundtrack in your opinion, and why? What do you look for?
It's a really interesting one, isn't it? Because I've always linked a soundtrack, and Claudia Gordon with the whole Unheard Melodies thing kind of was the first to really think about it this way. A soundtrack shouldn't really ever be the focus of what people are experiencing. I liken soundtracks to a referee in whichever sport you want to choose, whereas they're there to do a job, but you should never really notice them. And if you don't notice them, they've done a good job. So I think, and that goes completely against my instincts as a film music scholar, because I want to celebrate how amazing the music is in a soundtrack and point out all these intricate details that make the difference. But to me, an effective score or soundtrack should be one that just sits and does its job and does it well, and the audience know it's there, but don't consciously need to listen to it. They hear it but don't listen to it. In terms of the music, it obviously differs from film to film. I mean, you know, we have fantasy music, and we all know what fantasy music should sound like, and again, I'll refer back to the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. Howard Shore has pushed that in a very clear direction about what a fantasy film sounds like. Sci-fi, again, you in the early days you had the theremin and very otherworldly sounds, and now you've got now you've got the Hans Zimmers of the world creating sci-fi music, things like Interstellar and Inception. And you know, I think a good film score is just one that it kind of it embellishes what's already there on screen. It doesn't add something different. I mean, yes, you get film scores that are there to intentionally do something different to what's on screen, but very broadly speaking, I think a good film score should take the acting, the dialogue, the image, the lighting, everything, and it literally is the cherry on the cake. It's the final touch on making a memorable audiovisual experience for an audience. I mean, what's your perception? How do you, if you go to see a film at a cinema, what aspects are you looking for in a successful soundtrack?
I'm of two minds about it, because I think I see it more in the sense of what film am I there to watch, like what type of film am I there to watch. So on the one hand, you have the perspective. I was recently, I don't know if I read it or if I watched it, but there was an interview with Steven Spielberg about I think it was Indiana Jones, and he was just sort of mentioning how, you know, there wouldn't be the theme without Indiana Jones, but also equally there wouldn't be Indiana Jones. Like you hear the soundtrack, and you know you couldn't have one without the other, really. And I do appreciate that side of things, and I think that takes a lot of skill, particularly in melodic writing, and you know a little bit of the orchestration behind it, which I think composers like John Williams are just, you know, top at. On the other hand, I also really appreciate experiences. I'm now, it's coming back to me, a couple of video games, which are a little bit niche, so I don't know if anyone will know them, but I'll mention them anyway. One of them is Soma, which is a science fiction sort of post-apocalyptic video game. The other one is Observer System Redux. And also science fiction. Observer is more cyberpunk noir kind of thing. But both of them do something exceptionally well, particularly considering it's an interactive environment and the player is actually, you're not just watching the story unfold passively, you're sort of making it happen, interacting with the environment, and these things are also happening to you to a certain extent, as much as to the character. And it's just that feeling of, number one, as you said, there's elements of narrative that the player or the audience member might not even be aware of as we're watching, but it clicks sonically. It might be something like, there's these wind chimes that play throughout the entire game. On a first playthrough, you have no clue what they're doing. You get this sort of meditative feeling to exploration, but you don't know what they're doing there. So they work on a mood setting sort of vibe, but they also work later on when you connect it to the narrative and you realize that actually there's always been since the beginning a sort of blending of realities for the main character. So are the chimes there? Are they diegetic in the sense of he's hearing them inside his mind? Are they non-diegetic? Like,
that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because it kind of contradicts my response in that. So I'm saying that
Fair
an
enough.
audience shouldn't really notice the score, and you're saying that actually it's the players are actively having to think about the music and whether because it forms a vital part of the gameplay.
I mean, you might not notice it, bear in mind. Like, you might, finish the game and you still get the story. It's not like you don't get it if you don't, notice it or anything. But it's just something that I was analysing recently. And when I noticed it, it's so simple.
Yeah, I also
so simple.
I love music as well. That if you know it's there, or it's and I don't think you necessarily have to be musically trained to appreciate it, but little kind of musical, like the Yoda's theme appearing in E.T., for example. E.T. goes out wearing fancy dress for Halloween, and there's another small child wearing a Yoda outfit, and you hear one of the Star Wars leitmotifs, and that's in a different film, and it's those little musical moments that I think are really nice. So I think in terms of, let's talk about the most influential. We've talked about a score that's perhaps set you on the path to studying film music or composing film music. What do you think the most important film score of the last 10 or 15 years is, in terms of either how it's influenced you or the impact it's had on you emotionally, watching it in the cinema or on TV? If you had to pick one film score from the past 15 years as this is the gold standard.
15 years. Can I go back further? I know. Okay.
Yes, we're haggling now. So,
can we go back a little bit further?
You've been offered 20 and I'm offered 17. Okay.
No,
how
I don't know.
far do you want to go back? You're only born in 92. How far do you want to go back?
I don't know. Well, okay. Because that's such a loaded question. I think the score that just comes to my mind is Blade Runner, the original Blade Runner.
1984? Two.
Yeah, so can we go back 43 years?
If you want.
Wait, 43. Did I? Yeah, 43 years.
I feel like I'm in Back to the Future now.
No, I don't know. I feel
Blade
like
Runner.
that's.
I'm going to
go with that.
Talk to me about Blade Runner. Let's. In episode 1, we are in episode 1. We're getting to know each other. We're getting in the flow of it. Let's talk about. Is that your favourite film score? That's the next question, because you've gone back that far and picked it out as the. Is it your favourite film score?
At this point, you know what? Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to say yes.
Yes is good.
I'm going to say Blade Runner it definitely stands the test of time.
Talk to me about Blade Runner score then. What is it about the score to Blade Runner? Vangelis, of course.
It's, I don't know where to start. It's, okay. Keep it short and sweet.
Unlike the film.
I think, well, first of all, I think standing the test of time is important in the sense that, for me personally, obviously, for other people, this might not be the case, but for me, I've been studying this for 5 or 6 years now at this point. I still discover new things on the film and on the score, particularly aspects of his writing, and I'm going to say synth orchestration, because I feel like that's very much what he did. In terms of the details that he put on the bass line, for example, and how sometimes he would let it lead, not as much as someone like John Williams might do, but also lead sort of the harmony, and whenever there's a transposition or transition somewhere else, the bass line is sort of there, leading in that sense. But other details, for example, the way that he mixed acoustic instrumentation, choral parts, an acoustic saxophone at one point.
That blues track, is it Blade Runner Blues?
Blade Runner Blues is
where it's got the synth and the sax solo. It's just exquisite, isn't it? It's
like Blade Runner Blues is actually all on the CS80.
Oh really?
So it's all in the CS80. Okay. Yeah, but it's also that's another aspect of it, which is actually one aspect. I feel like Vangelis is the sweet spot between what I love about John Williams and what I love about Hans Zimmer. So he has
just alienated the entire family. So cause it's either Williams or Zimmer camp. You're going bang in the middle, which I like.
No, but I like
voice
all
of reason
three.
Between the Zimmer and the Williams thing.
I think all three are really important composers, no matter what you feel and whether you like them or not. I think we have to acknowledge that.
Oh yeah.
But Vangelis just sort of, he brings this harmonic richness and lushness to his compositions that I very much associate with Williams. And he also brings melody, which I think is really important. Not that Zimmer doesn't, obviously, he writes melodically, but I suppose maybe more recently not as much so. Maybe he might have 2 or 3 motifs, but there's a lot of more textural sort of writing. But the other thing as well that Vangelis, I feel, that sets him in between these two other composers is texture, precisely. So it's the way that he innovated with the synthesizer, and he both at the same time managed to recreate some orchestral textures with the synths that he used, but at the same time bring in that new sound and make it work exceptionally well. And then there's obviously, of course, the use of reverb, which I guess if you produce your own music and release it, at some point in time we're all guilty of just washing everything in reverb, and surely that will fix it. Of course, not as a fix, but he brought it in as a narrative choice very much. And I think Blade Runner is the prime example of a score that it tells you the story of the characters, it tells you the story of the emotional threads, the thematic narrative themes that run through the film, but it also tells you the story of the world. It's still, I think, the film where I sit down, I listen to the score, and the world is there.
That opening section when you just got the black screen and you hear these first kind of really sultry synth sounds, and you just see Los Angeles with all the flames. It's iconic, isn't it? It really is, and it just sets. It's that world building thing. You're immediately in that kind of noir type bleak future.
Which, funnily enough, I guess it is created by Blade Runner, isn't it, to a certain extent? I think another really great example to compare it would be if you consider the score for Chariots of Fire, which he did as well, and it's very much in the same style, more or less. But in my opinion, this is just personal opinion, but in my opinion, it's just night and day. It doesn't work nearly as well, even though I get the intention behind it. But it's almost like that style of writing that was built for a world like Blade Runner, and this just fits like a glove, and I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
How about you? I'll stop rambling now.
No, it's Blade Runner. I've not seen Blade Runner for years, and I'm yet to watch the sequel all the way through as well. But we'll save that conversation for the day, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm going to pick 2. I'm going to go back to the 1980s, and I'm going to pick one for the last 5 years. Might be more now. So the 1980s one, E.T.
Oh.
So
yeah.
1982 again, maybe the same year as.
It might be actually. Yeah. It might be.
82, I think. I know all these John Williams score dates off the top of my head, but that one it is 82. I'm sure it is 82 or 84. We'll figure it out afterwards.
Yeah.
But to me, that's probably John Williams' finest ever score, and in fact, Spielberg and Williams have kind of alluded to that in interviews where someone asked Spielberg, "What do you think John's best score is?" and he said E.T., and Williams has agreed. It's the epitome of what a film score. It kind of contradicts what I was saying earlier about you shouldn't notice it, in that it's just so emotionally symphonic and expansive, and it hits the kind of emotional high points at exactly the right times. The final 5 minutes is a scene that I always use when I go in my lectures, when I go into schools and do talks. I show the final 5 minutes of E.T.
Yeah.
because I think that's possibly the finest 5 minutes of symphonic films scoring of all time. And then I show it again without the music, and it's one of the most boring finales to a film I've ever seen. E.T., the finale to E.T. is literally a lot of people not saying anything to each other.
Yeah.
E.T.'s waddling about a little bit, gets on his spaceship and takes off, and all the Elliot's family look at the sky and start crying. Oh, it's going by, and it's really boring. There's nothing happens. It's a really slow visual climax to a film. But you add the John Williams' music to it, and it elevates it to, to something I've never experienced before in a cinema. And E.T. will always have a very, very strong place in my heart. So in terms of more recent film, and it's actually a TV series from 5-6 years ago now. Time flies when you're having fun, doesn't it? HBO's Chernobyl by... I'm going to try and pronounce her name. Apologies for my Icelandic. Hildur Guðnadóttir, something like that. She's a wonderful composer.
Yeah.
First woman to win an Academy Award for Best Original Score, which is, quite frankly, a disgrace when it's taken until the 2020s for that to happen. That's a conversation we can have on another day, perhaps, on the podcast. But her score for Chernobyl was outstanding, and I think it really elevated her to a front runner in modern day film composition and TV composition. So I'm sure we all know the backstory of Chernobyl, the nuclear power plant disaster in what's now Ukraine in the 1980s. And she actually went out and recorded sounds of a real nuclear power plant and incorporated that into her score. And I think it's an incredibly evocative sound world. I'll be honest, usually I'm much more a fan of very diatonic, sort of Western harmony, symphonic stuff. And I sometimes struggle with more sort of modernist approaches to composition. And hers is kind of veering towards that, but it was put together so beautifully. And you had these really mechanical, uncomfortable sounds of a nuclear power plant, all these clangs and bangs and beeps and sirens. And then the next minute you've got this like almost angelic choral piece. And the way that all combined within the episodes was just unbelievably... effective in my opinion, and so that's my choice for recent times. I think it's not one that I could really go onto Spotify and listen to. It's that,
fair enough.
But seeing it in the context of the show, and that's going back to what I was saying about kind of it being there and adding to what's already there. There, in my opinion, there's very, very few television shows that have a score in recent years that is as impressive as that in terms of the mood and the atmosphere it adds to obviously quite a distressing storyline. That's a really great one that you've mentioned. I think especially the fact as well, the way that she used sampling in particular of those ambient sounds of the power plants, that was fascinating. And I'm sure a lot of work and a lot of, just getting like programming the different levels of even just room tone, I think, and just making it sound like a pitched instrument, I suppose, think it was
at times.
A decommissioned nuclear plant in Lithuania or somewhere she went to, and just kind of started hitting these big metal doors and things and recording it, and some of the sounds must have been unbelievable that she got from there, and obviously they've made their way into the
it's fascinating
into the score.
So I guess this leads us nicely into I think our final question for this episode, which is a difficult one, but we need to ask it nonetheless. Who is your favourite composer and why?
John Williams. Okay, see you next episode. Sorry, that is an incredibly mainstream answer. Not lacking in imagination, maybe, but I can't see past Williams. Anyone who knows me that's watching or listening who has come across me in my work will know that I'm a big John Williams fanboy, and I have no shame in that. I just think, in terms of what he's achieved, he's the second most nominated person for an Academy Award of all time after Walt Disney. And I just think, not that we should judge music on what prizes it's won, but I think in terms of where he's come from writing for films that were quite frankly awful, he was kind of typecast as a comedy, like an adult comedy film with film titles like Not With My Wife You Don't and things like that, and a film I've never watched. I've got a spreadsheet, would you believe it, maybe
Yeah.
you would believe it, of all the John Williams scores, and my intention is to watch every
Every
single
single
film.
one of them. Yeah.
And I can't bring myself to watch the first sort of 5-6 years of his output because
Fair enough.
they're just awful films. Yeah, so going on from those early films, which were quite frankly awful, to then go on to to go on to things like Steven Spielberg getting him to do Jaws, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and he went on to do E.T., the Star Wars films, and then the one year that really strikes me as being evidence of John Williams's just incredible ability as a composer is 1993, because in the same year he did the score for Jurassic Park and Schindler's List. Now, a dinosaur film and a Holocaust film, and somehow he came up with just a mind-blowingly wonderful score for both of these films. Completely different mindset for both films, obviously, but his people criticize John Williams for being kind of a one-trick pony in terms of, he uses leitmotifs, uses a big symphonic orchestral score. Every film is largely, you can tell when you're listening to a John Williams film. But within each film, the fact that he can come up with these different leitmotifs for characters in every single film that he composes for, and they all mean something, and they're all memorable as well.
Yeah.
We're going to do an episode at some point on Jaws as its 50th anniversary. 2 notes. Genius, Two notes has become synonymous with the sound of sharks forever. He's approaching his mid-90s now, so I think he's coming to the end of his career, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah.
So who's going to take over his kind of, his position as the big symphonic orchestral composer? I'm not sure, but to me, it's John Williams. It's always been John Williams, and it'll take a lot to move me away from that viewpoint. How about you? One composer that means the most to you?
I think I'm going to break the rules again. Can I pick 2?
Yes.
If they're completely different, but there's reasons.
Please do.
First one is Vangelis, for the reasons that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Just, brilliant blending of texture and that intricacy, that complexity.
And different. Film music works on stereotypes, and for him to come along and try something different is a massive risk for the director, for him, for the film, and it worked for the reasons you mentioned,
Vangelis on one side for those reasons. On the other side, a bit more obscure maybe, there's this series of video games called the Souls games, coming from Dark Souls, coming from Demon Souls earlier on. But I think I would say Motoi Sakuraba, who was the composer for I think he still does the music even recently for Elden Ring. He does a little bit, he collaborates with other composers, but I think he did most of the first game's soundtrack. And that soundtrack, all of them, but Dark Souls 1, just the whole experience as well, to be fair, but that moved me in such a way where you've got these epic sort of heavily orchestrated boss themes that just literally stress you out and make you feel as small as can be as a player. And then you reach the final boss. This is a spoiler, I'm sorry. But you reach the final boss, and it's this, there's this whole mythology built around this boss, and you're sort of anticipating that battle, and you've lost so many times up until that point, and you're like, oh my God, this is going to be difficult. And it's this sort of decayed king that, is nowhere near what he used to be. It's almost like you're confronted with a shell of a person that used to be great at one point, but maybe is not anymore. And the way that the music just dials down, and it's this theme composed for 2 pianos, and it's just, it broke me. It broke me. So I think I'm going to go with, Souls composers in general, but Motoi Sakuraba, I think, is one of them as well.
Excellent. Yeah. Wonderful stuff. Right, I think we've pretty much come to the end of this first episode, where we've just had a very light-hearted chat about all things screen music, which has been wonderful to kick us off. So yeah, thank you very much for a very interesting conversation.
Yeah, thank you as well. Yeah.
And we will see you in future episodes. The next episode will be a special about Jaws, which because it's the 50th anniversary, we'll talk about John Williams's famous two-note motif. And then we're going to have lots of guests on in the future, so musicologists, composers, people who work in the industry, talking about all things film, television, and video game music. So thank you very much for watching or listening if you're listening. And it's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
See you next time.